I never thought my life could unravel in a single night, but the Pacific Coast Highway has a way of teaching you lessons you never wanted to learn. My name's Abigail Carter, and at 32, I was on top of the world, CEO of a Silicon Valley startup that had just secured $10 million, 0 cents, in venture capital from my AI-driven health app. I was living the American dream, the kind they write about in tech blogs and toast to at rooftop bars in San Francisco. But that dream shattered on a rain-soaked stretch of asphalt, and the people I trusted most, my family, walked away from the wreckage without looking back. They left me with a spine crushed beyond repair, a wheelchair I couldn't navigate, and words that still burn in my mind. Don't call us while we're enjoying ourselves. It was a stormy October night, the kind where the Pacific Ocean churns black and restless, spitting mist onto the windshield as you drive. I was heading back to my loft in the city after a family dinner in Marin County, the kind of dinner that leaves you with a knot in your stomach and a headache you can't shake. My parents, Richard and Evelyn Carter, had hosted it at their sprawling estate in Sausalito, all glass walls and mid-century furniture, the kind of place that screams old money. My younger sister, Sophie, 24 and freshly graduated with a marketing degree she barely earned, was the star of the evening, as always. Sophie, with her Instagram-perfect smile and a trust fund to match, had always been their golden child. Me, I was the one who clawed my way up, coding my first app at 16 to pay for college, while they bought Sophie a convertible for her sweet 16. The dinner was supposed to celebrate 2 milestones, Sophie's graduation from USC and my startup's latest funding round. But the air was thick with tension, the kind you feel when you're sitting at a table with people who love you conditionally. My mother sipped her Pinot Grigio, her eyes flicking to Sophie's every word, while my father nodded along, barely acknowledging the pitch deck I'd spent weeks preparing. I tried to share news about my app, VitalSync, which used AI to predict health crises before they happened. A game changer, the investors had said. But Mom cut me off to gush over Sophie's latest influencer deal with a skincare brand. She's got 200,000 followers now, Mom said, her voice dripping with pride. I forced a smile, my fork hovering over the overcooked salmon, and swallowed the familiar sting of being invisible. Driving home, the rain came down in sheets, the kind that makes your wipers useless and turns the highway into a slick death trap. I gripped the steering wheel of my Tesla, the dashboard glowing softly against the darkness. The Pacific Coast Highway wound tight against the cliffs, each curve demanding focus. I was replaying the dinner in my head. Mom's dismissive nod, Dad's half-hearted, "That's nice, Abby." Sophie's giggles as she scrolled through her phone. When it happened, a semi-truck, its headlights blinding, swerved into my lane without warning. My heart slammed into my throat. I yanked the wheel hard, tires screeching, but the road was a river of rain. My car fishtailed, skidded, and then there was nothing, just air. The Tesla plunged off the cliff, a 20-foot drop into a ravine that felt like an eternity. Metal crunched, glass shattered, and the world spun into chaos. I smelled gasoline, saw flames licking the hood, and then my legs. They wouldn't move. Panic clawed at me as I realized I couldn't feel anything below my waist. The last thing I saw before blacking out was a rescuer's face, shouting through the smoke, "Stay with us!" I woke to the sterile hum of a hospital room, the kind of place where time feels like it's holding its breath. Machines beeped, tubes snaked into my arms, and pain radiated from every nerve. The fluorescent lights burned my eyes, but the doctor's words burned worse. Spinal cord injury, temporary paralysis, possibly permanent. We've stabilized you, but recovery is uncertain. He rattled off terms. Low 1 vertebra, experimental nerve grafts, months of therapy. But all I could think was, I can't walk. My startup, my life, everything I'd built. It hung by a thread. I asked for my family, expecting them to be there, holding vigil like families do in movies. The nurse hesitated. We notified them. They're on their way. Hours passed before they showed up. My parents swept into the room, dressed like they'd just stepped off a yacht. Mom in a tailored blazer, Dad in a cashmere sweater, Sophie trailing behind in a designer jumpsuit, her phone glued to her hand. Their faces held concern, but it was the kind you fake for a LinkedIn post. Mom checked her watch twice in 10 minutes. Dad stood by the door, arms crossed, muttering about traffic. Sophie glanced up from her phone long enough to say, "God, Abby, you scared us," before snapping a selfie with the hospital bed in the background. I wanted to scream, but the pain meds made everything fuzzy, like I was underwater. They stayed for 45 minutes, long enough to hear the doctor repeat the prognosis. Experimental surgeries, a year of rehab, no guarantees. Mom's eyes glazed over as she scrolled through travel itineraries on her phone. We were finalizing New Zealand plans, she said, as if my shattered spine was a scheduling conflict. Dad patted my hand, avoiding the IV line. "You're tough, Abby. You'll figure this out." Sophie posted a story with a sad face emoji and the caption, "Sending love to my sis." Then they left, promising to return tomorrow. They didn't. The second surgery was a nightmare. Halfway through, a power outage hit the hospital, plunging the operating room into chaos. Monitors failed, alarms screamed, and the surgical team scrambled in the dark. My heart rate spiked. I flatlined for 22 seconds before they brought me back. The surgeon later admitted it was a miracle I survived. I lay in recovery, wires and tubes tethering me to life, wondering why my family hadn't called. The nurse, a kind woman named Rosa, squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than you know," she said. I didn't feel strong. I felt abandoned. 5 days after the crash, I overheard my parents in the hallway, their voices sharp and careless. "The deposits are non-refundable," Mom hissed. 6 weeks in New Zealand. Do you know how much we've spent? Dad's voice was going to drag on for months. "We can't put our lives on hold." Sophie's voice, softer, chimed in. "Maybe we could postpone." Mom shut her down. "Sophie, you deserve this. It's your graduation trip." I lay there, tears soaking the pillow, realizing I was less important than a luxury vacation. They decided to extend the trip to 6 weeks, a once-in-a-lifetime adventure, as if my survival wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime fight. Discharged to my San Francisco loft, I faced a new kind of hell. The space was all sleek lines and open concept design, great for Instagram, terrible for a wheelchair. My parents had set me up before they left, a box of protein bars, a jug of water, and a stack of takeout menus. "You've always been independent," Dad said, as if that excused their absence. Mom added, "Just rest, you'll be fine." Sophie hugged me, her perfume overwhelming, and whispered, "I'll text you." Then they were gone, off to catch their flight to Auckland. The door clicked shut, and the silence was louder than the crash. The first night, alone, my wheelchair tipped over while I reached for my painkillers. I hit the floor hard, the bottle rolling under the couch, out of reach. I lay there for 3 hours, pain shooting through my useless legs, until exhaustion forced me to crawl back into the chair. I couldn't shower. My bathroom was too narrow. I couldn't cook. The counters were too high. I survived on stale protein bars and warm water, my phone's battery dying as I tried to call for help. Sophie's texts came through. Selfies on a New Zealand beach, captioned, "Paradise found." I replied, begging for help, but she never responded. My parents' social media was worse. Yacht trips, vineyard tours, captions boasting perfect family escape. I wasn't in a single photo. Medical bills arrived like vultures, each one pecking at my startup's funds. The ambulance ride alone was $2,000, 0 cents. My savings, meant for scaling VitalSync, dwindled to cover copays and therapy costs. Investors started whispering, their emails sharp with doubt. Can you still lead? My team, once my ride-or-die crew, grew distant. Their Slack messages curt as deadlines loomed. I was losing everything. My health, my company, my family. Then came the home health aide, a guy named Derek I hired out of desperation. He seemed professional at first, but by day 3 I noticed my painkillers disappearing. He'd stolen half my supply, leaving me screaming through the night as withdrawal and agony tore me apart. I fired him, but the damage was done. I had no meds and no way to get more. The gas leak was the closest I came to dying. I didn't notice it at first. Trapped in my wheelchair, my senses dulled by pain and exhaustion. The air grew heavy. My head spun, and I thought I was hallucinating when the room tilted. A neighbor, an old retiree named Carl, smelled the gas and broke down my door just in time. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, his voice shaking as paramedics swarmed in. Lucky didn't feel like the right word. By week 2, my surgical wounds were turning septic, red and hot, oozing under the bandages I couldn't change properly. I missed a critical appointment with my spinal specialist because no rideshare would take a wheelchair-bound passenger, and taxis quoted $200 0 cents for an accessible van. The hospital receptionist was apologetic but firm. The next slot was a month out. Missing this could mean permanent damage, she warned. I hung up, my hands trembling, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd fallen so far. Then came the corporate vultures. A rival startup, HealthPeak, leaked my health crisis to TechCrunch, spinning a narrative that I was unfit to lead. My company's valuation tanked overnight, and investors scheduled an emergency board meeting to discuss leadership transitions. I was fighting for my life, and they were plotting to steal my company. Worse, a hacker breached VitalSync's servers, threatening to leak our proprietary AI code. I caught the breach while reviewing logs in a pain-fueled haze, but fixing it cost me a night of sleep and a chunk of my sanity. Sophie's vlog was the final twist of the knife. She posted a 10-minute video from New Zealand, laughing about my drama and claiming I was milking the accident for sympathy. Her 200,000 followers ate it up, flooding my inbox with hate mail. "Faking it for attention," one read. "You're a fraud," said another. I stopped checking my phone, but the words burrowed deep, feeding the dark thoughts that circled at night. What was the point of fighting when no one cared? My lowest moment came when I knocked my last bottle of painkillers under the couch. I stared at the pills, scattered like stars on the hardwood, just out of reach. My legs were useless, my arms too weak to drag me closer. I sat there sobbing as the pain became a living thing, clawing at my spine. I thought about giving up, not just on the pills, but on everything. My startup, my recovery, my life. Who would notice if I stopped trying? My parents were sipping wine in Queenstown. Sophie was posing for photos on a glacier. I was alone, and the world kept spinning without me. 3 days after they left, a knock at the door snapped me out of my spiral. I ignored it at first, too exhausted to care, but the knocking persisted. "Abigail, it's Liam from work. You okay?" Liam was a junior developer at VitalSync, a quiet guy who'd barely spoken in our sprint meetings. I wheeled to the door, my hair matted, my clothes stained with days-old sweat. He stood there with a canvas tote, his face pale with worry. "We haven't heard from you in days," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He took one look at the chaos, empty protein bar wrappers, spilled water, unwashed dishes, and got to work. Liam didn't ask questions at first. He cleaned the loft, organized my meds, and cooked a proper meal. Pasta with marinara, the smell alone enough to make me cry. Over dinner, I broke down, spilling everything. The crash, my family's betrayal, the chilling words they'd left me with. "Don't call us while we're enjoying ourselves," I repeated, my voice cracking. Liam's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with anger. "I didn't expect from someone so reserved." "That's not family," he said. "That's abandonment." He stayed for hours, helping me shower for the first time in a week, washing my hair with a gentleness that felt foreign. He called our team's lead engineer, Maya, and her paramedic brother, Noah, who came over the next morning. Noah examined my wounds, his face grim. "You're lucky this isn't full-blown sepsis," he said, cleaning and redressing them with steady hands. Maya, meanwhile, got on the phone with the hospital, demanding an earlier appointment. "She's post-surgical with mobility issues," she snapped. "Find a slot this week." Her tenacity worked. A social worker arranged medical transport for Friday. Liam rallied the team, setting up a rotation schedule. Every day someone showed up. Priya with groceries, Ethan with code updates, even our intern Sam with homemade soup from his mom. They weren't just colleagues anymore. They were my lifeline. The social worker connected me to disability services, meal deliveries, volunteer aids, a virtual support group for accident survivors. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope, like I wasn't climbing this mountain alone. Then came the email that changed everything. It arrived at 2 a.m., sender anonymous, subject line, The Carter Trust. It read, "Ask about the fund your parents hid from you. June 14th is key." My heart raced. A trust fund. My parents had never mentioned one, but their wealth had always seemed off. Sophie's trust fund, the Sausalito estate, their endless vacations. It didn't add up with Dad's real estate job and Mom's charity boards. I forwarded the email to Liam, who promised to dig into it discreetly. "Something's not right," he said, his voice low. "We'll figure it out." 6 weeks in, I felt sensation in my toes. A miracle, the doctors said. My team threw a surprise party, decorating my loft with streamers and a cake that read, "Abigail the Unbreakable." I laughed for the first time since the crash, surrounded by people who'd chosen me when my family hadn't. But the anonymous email lingered in my mind, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Why June 14th? What were my parents hiding, and why did I feel like someone was watching me, their eyes on my loft from the shadows across the street? When my family returned, they walked into a scene they didn't expect. I was mid-therapy with Zoe, my physical therapist, surrounded by Liam, Maya, and Noah, my loft buzzing with life. Mom's face froze, her designer tote stuffed with souvenirs, skewy trinkets, a wool scarf, like they could erase 6 weeks of absence. Dad tried to play the concerned father, but his eyes darted to the team, confused by their presence. Sophie hung back, her guilt palpable. "We're back to help," Mum said, as if I'd been waiting for their permission to heal. I didn't let them off easy. "You left me," I said, my voice steady despite the rage. "You told me not to call because my pain would ruin your vacation." Mom's face flushed, but I kept going. "You don't get to waltz back in and act like nothing happened." Dad stammered. Sophie stared at the floor, and for the first time I saw them for what they were, flawed, selfish, human. But I wasn't the same Abigail. I'd found a new family, a new strength, and a mystery that would unravel everything I thought I knew about the Carters. The days after Liam's visit blurred into a haze of pain, hope, and creeping dread. My San Francisco loft, once a symbol of my startup success, had become a battlefield where I fought for every inch of survival. The wheelchair scraped against the hardwood, my arms ached from the constant effort of movement, and the surgical wounds on my back throbbed with a heat that whispered of infection. I was 32 Abigail Carter, the CEO who'd convinced Silicon Valley's toughest investors to bet $10 million, 0 cents, on my AI health app, Vital Sync. But now, I was a woman staring down a broken body and a family who'd left me with nothing but a box of protein bars and the cruel command, "Don't call us while we're enjoying ourselves." My parents, Richard and Evelyn, were sipping wine in New Zealand with my sister Sophie, their Instagram posts a daily reminder of their betrayal. Yet, in the wreckage of my life, a new kind of family was forming, co-workers who'd become my lifeline. But the shadows were closing in, and something told me the crash that broke my spine wasn't as random as it seemed. The first week alone was a descent into chaos. My loft, with its high ceilings and minimalist decor, was a nightmare for someone newly paralyzed. The kitchen counters loomed out of reach, the bathroom door was too narrow for my wheelchair, and the painkillers I needed to survive the night were scattered under the couch after my fall. I'd lie awake, the city's hum filtering through the windows, and hear my mother's voice. "You've always been independent, Abby." Independence wasn't a choice anymore. It was a sentence. The medical bills piled up on my desk, each envelope a reminder that my startup's funds were bleeding out. The ambulance ride, the surgeries, the therapy sessions, $50,000 0 cents and counting, eating into the capital I'd raised for VitalSync. My investors were circling, their emails sharp with questions about my capacity to lead. I was fighting to keep my company alive while fighting to stay alive, and I was losing on both fronts. Then came the sepsis scare, the surgical wounds along my spine, where doctors had grafted experimental nerve patches, turned angry red, hot to the touch, and oozed a sickly fluid. I tried to clean them, following the nurse's instructions, but reaching behind myself was like trying to thread a needle in a storm. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my nerves, and without my painkillers, stolen by that bastard Derek, the home health aide, I was defenseless. I called the hospital, my voice shaking, and begged for an appointment. The receptionist's response was a gut punch. "Earliest slot is in 4 weeks. I explained my situation, paralyzed, alone, signs of infection, but she was unmoved. "Try to get a ride," she said, as if I could just hop into an Uber. I hung up, my hands trembling, and stared at the wheelchair that had become my prison. Permanent nerve damage was a real risk, the doctor had said. If the infection spread, I could lose any chance of walking again. The corporate wolves didn't wait for me to hit rock bottom. HealthPeak, a rival startup, got wind of my condition, God knows how, and leaked it to TechCrunch. The headline was brutal. VitalSync CEO paralyzed. Can she still lead? My company's valuation tanked 20% overnight, and my board scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss leadership transitions. I read the email from my chairman, a cold-blooded venture capitalist named Victor Lang, while my fever spiked. "Abigail, we need assurance you can deliver. An in-person meeting is critical." In person, I could barely get to the bathroom. I fired back a response promising to join via Zoom, but Victor's reply was immediate. "Not good enough. We need you here or we're exploring other options." My heart sank. VitalSync was my life's work, coded from scratch in my dorm room at Stanford. They were trying to steal it from under me. Sleep deprivation made everything worse. Pain kept me up for days, and when I did sleep, nightmares of the crash haunted me. The truck's headlights, the cliff's edge, the flames. One night, blurry-eyed and desperate to stay relevant, I tried to review VitalSync's beta code. My fingers slipped, and I introduced a bug that crashed the app during a demo for a potential client. The client pulled out, costing us a $2 million 0 cents contract. Stared at the error logs, tears streaming down my face, knowing I'd handed my rivals another weapon. Then the hacker struck. An alert pinged at 3 a.m. Someone had breached our servers, accessing the AI core of VitalSync. They left a taunting message: "Sell now or this code goes public." My app's proprietary algorithm, the heart of our edge over health peak, was at risk. I spent hours patching the breach, my hands shaking, knowing one wrong move could end my company. Sophie's vlog was the breaking point. I was scrolling through my phone, avoiding the hate mail from her followers, when I saw it. A 10-minute video titled, "Family Vibes in NZ." She laughed into the camera, her sun-kissed face framed by a glacier, and said, "My sister's been so dramatic about her little accident, probably just milking it for attention." Her 200,000 followers ate it up, flooding my inbox with venom. Rod, they called me. Attention whore. I threw my phone across the room, the screen cracking against the wall. My own sister, the one I'd tutored through high school, the one I'd cheered for at her graduation, had turned my pain into content. I didn't respond to her texts after that. I couldn't. The betrayal cut deeper than the crash. My loft mirrored my collapse. Spoiled food rotted in the fridge, unwashed clothes piled up in the corner, and medical supplies, gauze, antiseptic, syringes lay scattered like debris from a war zone. Friends sent sympathetic texts, but their visits stopped. They were startup hustlers too, with pitch decks and deadlines of their own. I didn't blame them, but the isolation was suffocating. I'd built my life on being the one who had it together, the one who didn't need help now. I was the one texting, "Can you grab me some groceries?" and getting read receipts with no reply. The lowest moment came on day 9. I was reaching for my last bottle of painkillers, my hands trembling from fever and exhaustion, when it slipped from my grasp. The pills spilled under the couch, white dots mocking me from the hardwood. I tried to lean down, but my wheelchair tipped, nearly sending me to the floor again. I froze, pain roaring through my spine, and for the first time, I thought about giving up, not just on the pills, but on everything. My company was slipping away, my body was failing, my family was gone. What was the point? I sat there, staring at the pills, imagining how easy it would be to stop fighting. The city's lights blinked outside, indifferent, and I wondered if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Then came the knock. It was soft at first, almost lost in the hum of the city, but it grew insistent. "Abigail? It's Liam. You in there?" I hesitated, shame burning my cheeks at the thought of him seeing me like this. Hair matted, loft erect, eyes red from crying. But the knocking didn't stop. I wheeled to the door, my arms screaming with effort, and opened it. Liam, the junior developer who'd barely spoken in our sprint meetings, stood there with a canvas tote, his face tight with worry. "You haven't answered Slack in 3 days, he said, stepping inside. He took one look at the chaos and didn't flinch. "Jesus, Abby, why didn't you say something?" I broke down, the dam bursting as I told him everything, the crash, the hospital, my family's betrayal. The words poured out, raw and jagged, until I was sobbing, my hands covering my face. Liam didn't try to fix it with platitudes. He just listened, his jaw clenched, and when I finished, he said, "They don't deserve you, but we've got you." He started cleaning, moving with a quiet efficiency that felt like a lifeline. He gathered the spilled pills, washed dishes, and cooked a meal. Pasta with garlic bread, the smell filling the loft with something like hope. When he handed me a plate, I ate for the first time in days, tears mixing with the marinara. Liam stayed until midnight, helping me shower and change into clean clothes. The act was humbling, his hands gentle but professional as he navigated the awkwardness of my paralysis. He called Maya, our lead engineer, and her brother Noah, a paramedic. They arrived the next morning, Noah's face grim as he examined my wounds. "You're on the edge of sepsis," he said, cleaning the incisions with antiseptic that stung like fire. "You can't do this alone." Maya, all sharp edges and coder's focus, got on the phone with the hospital, her voice cutting through the receptionist's excuses. "Meal deliveries," she said, and somehow she made it happen. A social worker arranged medical transport for Friday and connected me to disability services, meal deliveries, volunteer aids, a virtual support group for accident survivors. Liam rallied the team. Priya, our CFO, showed up with a spreadsheet to defer my medical bills, saving my dwindling savings. Ethan, our UI designer, logged into my system remotely to fix the beta bug, salvaging our client demo. Even Sam, the intern, brought soup his mom made, the kind of comfort food that reminded me of a life before all this. They set up a rotation schedule, ensuring someone checked in daily. For the first time, I wasn't alone. These people, who I'd only known through code reviews and coffee runs, were rewriting my story. But the shadows kept growing. The anonymous email, "The Carter Trust, June 14th is key," haunted me. I showed it to Liam, who frowned, his fingers tapping nervously. "This smells like trouble," he said. "I'll dig into it, but you need to watch your back." He started running traces on the email, but the sender had covered their tracks. Then came the lawyer's letter, delivered by courier to my loft. It was from a firm I'd never heard of, the words cold and precise. "Preliminary evidence suggests your accident may not have been accidental. We need to discuss corporate involvement." My stomach dropped. Corporate involvement? The truck that swerved into my lane, had it been deliberate? I thought of HealthPeak, their leak to TechCrunch, their sudden push to bury VitalSync. Were they capable of something this sinister? The pressure didn't let up. Victor Lang, the venture capitalist, doubled down, demanding an in-person meeting in Palo Alto. "No Zoom," he texted. "Be there or we pull funding." I was still in a wheelchair, still fighting infection, and he knew it. I spent hours prepping a virtual pitch, my hands shaking as I typed, only to get a one-line reply, "Not acceptable." Meanwhile, a disgruntled ex-employee fired for missing deadlines leaked my medical records to HealthPeak. The records hit the dark web, then surfaced in a rival's press release, twisted to paint me as unstable. My inbox filled with more hate mail, some threatening violence. "Step down or we'll make you," one read. I stopped sleeping, my eyes scanning the loft's windows for that mysterious figure I'd seen lurking across the street. Sophie's late-night call came at week 5, her voice hushed over the hotel's Wi-Fi. "Abby, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "They wouldn't let me call you. They said you'd ruin the trip." She paused, her breath shaky. "They've been lying about a trust fund. It was supposed to be for both of us, but they cut you out years ago." My heart raced. A trust fund? The anonymous email flashed in my mind. Was this the secret tied to June 14th? "What else do you know?" I pressed, but the line went dead. When I called back, it went to voicemail. Sophie's next text was a single word: "Sorry." Physical therapy started with Zoe, a no-nonsense therapist who pushed me through exercises that felt like torture. "You're not here to feel sorry for yourself," she said, her voice sharp but kind. "You're here to fight." I gritted my teeth through leg lifts, sweat mixing with tears, but each session brought a flicker of progress. At 6 weeks, I felt a tingle in my toes, a miracle, Zoe called it. My team celebrated with pizza and beer, their laughter filling the loft. Priya raised a glass, her eyes shining. "To Abigail the Unbreakable." I smiled, but the lawyer's letter and Sophie's call gnawed at me. Someone had wanted me out of the way. The question was who and why. Aunt Clara's call came out of nowhere. She lived in Seattle, estranged from my mother since a falling out I never fully understood. "I heard about the crash," she said, her voice warm but laced with old pain. "Your mother didn't tell me. A friend did." She recounted my parents' history, neglecting their own parents, prioritizing vacations over family crises. "They've always been like this," she said, "but you're not alone, Abby." Her care packages arrived weekly. Adaptive tools to reach high shelves, books to keep my mind sharp, letters that felt like hugs. Clara's support, distant but steady, was a reminder that blood didn't always mean family. Then Liam found the file. He was debugging my laptop, trying to trace the hacker, when he stumbled on a hidden folder buried in my cloud drive. It was encrypted, labeled Carter_614. June 14th. My pulse quickened as he cracked it open, revealing financial records linking my parents to HealthPeak's parent company. Payments, stock options, a consulting deal worth millions, all dated around the time of my crash. "This can't be a coincidence," Liam said, his voice low. "They're in bed with your rivals." My mind reeled. Had my parents known about the truck? Had they planned it? The thought was too monstrous to hold, but the evidence was staring me in the face. 8 weeks in, I traded my wheelchair for forearm crutches, my legs trembling but alive with sensation. My loft, once a prison, became a hub of energy. Team meetings, therapy sessions, late-night strategy talks to save VitalSync. The support group, a virtual lifeline, gave me space to voice the fears I couldn't share with anyone else. The pain, the betrayal, the growing suspicion that my accident was sabotage. One member, a former PI named Rachel, offered to dig into the lawyer's letter. "Corporate hits aren't unheard of," she said. "You've got enemies, Abigail." The board meeting loomed, and Victor's ultimatum hung over me like a guillotine. I couldn't make it to Palo Alto, but I wasn't giving up. With Maya's help, I prepared a presentation that laid out VitalSync's future, my vision sharper than ever. We streamed it to the board, my voice steady despite the pain shooting through my spine. "VitalSync is my life," I said, staring into the camera. "I built it, and I'll fight for it, wheelchair or not." The board went silent, then Victor's face softened. Just a fraction. "We'll discuss," he said. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss. At 10 weeks, my team threw a surprise party, transforming my loft with streamers and a cake that read Abigail the Unbreakable. Laughter filled the air, and for a moment I forgot the shadows, the hacker, the lawyer's letter, the figure outside my window. Rachel called that night with a lead. The truck driver had vanished, his records scrubbed, but a VIN number traced to a shell company linked to HealthPeak. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a hit on my company. It was a hit on me. When my family returned, they walked into a war zone they didn't understand. I was mid-therapy, Zoe guiding my wobbly steps, when the door swung open. Mom clutched her designer tote. Dad's face was a mask of forced concern, and Sophie lingered behind, eyes downcast. They expected a broken daughter, grateful for their return. Instead, they found me surrounded by my team. Liam debugging code, Maya on the phone with investors, Noah checking my vital. "Who are these people?" Mom demanded, her voice sharp. "My family," I said, the words cutting deeper than I intended. "I didn't hold back. You left me to die," I said, my crutches steady under me. "You chose a vacation over your daughter, told me my pain would ruin your fun." Mom's face flushed. Dad stammered, but I kept going. "I've built a life without you, and I'm stronger for it." Sophie's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped forward. "I was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "I should have stayed." Mom turned on her, furious, but Sophie stood her ground. "We hurt her, Mom. We can't pretend we didn't." The room crackled with tension. But something shifted. My parents' defenses crumbled, their guilt exposed in the face of Sophie's rebellion. They left that night, promising to make things right, but I knew better. Trust was a bridge they'd burned. Sophie stayed, helping with therapy, cooking dinners, slowly rebuilding what we'd lost. The lawyer's letter, the hidden file, the figure in the shadows, they hung over me, unanswered questions that promised more battles. But as I took my first unassisted step that night, my team cheering. I felt a fire ignite. I was Abigail Carter, the unbreakable, and whatever came next, corporate conspiracies, family secrets, or my own body's limits, I'd face it head on, with a family I'd chosen and a strength I'd earned.